Hello everyone. Today is Sunday, July 27th. Bitcoin is trading at $118,171 after it dropped to around $114,700. I warned about the decline and its high risks. It should be noted that from a global perspective, these risks have not gone anywhere, but the situation has changed somewhat since then. As we can see, Bitcoin has already risen to the area of $118,000 and above, and we will try to figure out what prospects it has in the near future and globally. As usual, we'll start with the monthly candles. They are the most indicative in terms of global trends and tendencies. So let's switch to them, turning off the drawing tools, and my markup will need that a bit later. So what do we see here? We see the current July candle, which will close literally in 4 days or 3 days. It's hard for me to say. How many days are there in July again? May has 31, June has 30, July has 31. So in 4 days. And this candle is a full-fledged growth candle. And it suggests that next month in August, with a fairly high probable likelihood, we will see a new all-time high. So in other words, it will be a new high for July. But since July's high was an all-time high, in August there will be a new all-time high, I would say, with a fairly high probability. This is by no means a guarantee, but I would rate the probability as high, very high. Candles like this, as a rule, tend to be followed by continuation. It's a good candle. It doesn't close right at the very top without an upper shadow. It has a normal body, nothing extreme, and a normal upper shadow, nothing excessive. And candles like this, I emphasize, usually tend to have follow-through. Therefore, we proceed from the assumption that the monthly candles indicate that Bitcoin will set a new high in August. But at the same time, I want to remind you once again, look, here we have one high, and the RSI has a corresponding higher, some kind of high, then there are other higher highs, but the RSI is already at lower levels. And now we have a third high in July, and in August it might go even higher, right? And the RSI is not reaching new highs. This double divergence on the monthly candles is a very serious indication of a reversal, a global reversal of the monthly time frame to the downside. But it's too early to talk about that for now. We can only talk about a reversal when we see a bearish engulfing pattern on the monthly scale. So what kind is that? Here, look, in April 2024, we had a red candle that completely engulfed the green one, and then there was some decline. Bitcoin dropped to around 49,000 from the then maximum of 74.5. Look, here in January 2025, we had a high of 109,588. There was an engulfing pattern here, and we kept updating the low for 2 more consecutive months. Yes, there was growth in April, but it happened after a new low was set, which was updated after this red candle in March and again in April. Accordingly, as long as we don't see such engulfing patterns, it's premature to talk about a decline or any kind of market reversal from the perspective of monthly candles. However, the risks of a decline are visible here. You need to be very careful and keep an eye on the smaller timeframes, because any major move, just like any long journey, begins with the first step. A major move in the market starts with the smaller time frame. We will get to them. Weekly candles? What do we see on the weekly candles? Right here, in fact, there's a candle that may have already possibly turned the market downward. But let's remember the monthly candles, they suggest that in August it's still likely to see a new high. But the weekly candles where a new high was made and then closed with a red candle indicate that we need to be extremely cautious, because the decline may have already started, we just haven't seen its development yet. However, we can only talk about a full-fledged decline once we engulf this candle from the 7th of July and close below approximately $108,700 on the weekly candles. So for now, these are just preliminary signs, but they suggest that we need to be very careful, and I definitely wouldn't enter into any long-term buys, at least not for Bitcoin. Now, well, there's really not much else to look at here. Let's switch to the daily chart. There's something to see here, and let's remove the markings for now. What do we see on the monthly, on the daily candles? Well, we see that there's some kind of sideways movement, right? And it's unclear which way we'll break out. There was a certain high here, well, this was the all-time high, and it happened at a fairly high RSI value. There are no divergences here, and it would be good to update the high, create a daily scale divergence, and then move down, that is, according to a solid technical picture. For now, that hasn't happened, and it's possible that we'll see this new high in August. Although August, as far as I know, is historically a very bad month for Bitcoin. Bitcoin usually declines in August, but that's not a rule. In general, there are no axioms or absolute truths in financial markets. Well, except for the fact that you must control your risks and follow risk management. Don't take leveraged positions like X20, X100, and so on. Now I'm turning on my charting, it will help us. So let me remind you that here I've marked what we're paying attention to. First, there's an ascending channel built using two lows and the high between them. And this ascending channel suggests that Bitcoin could rise to its upper boundary. There you go. But we need to shift this a bit to the right because time is passing and we're not getting any closer to it. And that's around the $132,000 area. But it's not at all necessary to go that high. Bitcoin could simply update the current high, which is, let's recall, because honestly I don't remember, $123,218. So we might just slightly surpass it or even approach it and then head down. Nevertheless, technically, according to this markup, Bitcoin could rise to around $132,000. Somewhere around 130, 129. We don't necessarily have to touch this channel boundary, but it still acts as a magnet. Now let's take a closer look. What have I marked here? Two yellow levels. These are the levels of the flat range within which we are trading. Now I'll zoom in so you can take a closer look at what kind of flat sideways movement we have here. Look, the upper level is the point from which, after updating the high, some kind of reversal began. Notice that this level was broken only once. That was a false breakout because after that, the price started to decline, which ultimately brought us, the day before yesterday, to the level of $114,723, right? But what's very important is that this decline was ultimately bought back, and the daily candle, despite its large volume, closed above the lower level, which marks the same sideways Ranger range where Bitcoin is currently trading. This is the level of $117,420. And from this level, look, the price bounced off and is currently moving upward. Moreover, by formal indicators, we didn't have any reversal to the downside because this huge green candle, which engulfed 1, 2, 3 red candles and 3 days of decline and actually signaled the market reversal upward, was not engulfed by this 3-day drop. Yes, we went significantly lower, but we weren't able to engulf that candle. And thus, technically, we didn't even form a formal reversal to the downside. That's why, according to formal indicators, the market is looking upward, yes. Formally, but at the same time, it remains within the range. And here you need to be very careful because no matter how much it seems to be looking upward, it's still range-bound trading, and only a daily candle closing above 119,841 would be a serious signal for an upward move and most likely a new all-time high, as well as the potential formation of a daily scale divergence. That's all, there's nothing more to add here. And now let's take a look. Well, at the moment, accordingly, the market is most likely, yes, looking upward. But as I mentioned in the previous video, the entry point here is good around 117,420 for going long and 119,841 for going short, but always with a stop loss. Accordingly, for now, this looks a bit more like a long, just a bit more. Now let's switch to the 4-hour candles. Maybe they'll give us some clues. So 4-hour candles. Let's remove all the markings I made. There's no clarity on the 4-hour candles either because Bitcoin notice is currently squeezed very tightly in a very narrow range between the 50 period and 100 period moving averages on the 4-hour chart. And it's hard to say which way it will break out. But the direction of the RSI seems to indicate a continuation of growth. At least it seems so. In theory, you could certainly try to go long on this particular trade, with a very precise stop just below the current 4-hour candle, provided that it definitively closes green and remains well above this significant red 100 period moving average. This strategy aims to capitalize on potential upward momentum assuming the conditions are met. But overall, I have to say the situation is quite debatable. I would refrain from opening any trades right now. I would wait for the market to move up somewhere to around $123,000, update its all-time high, and then I would look for an opportunity to open a short position. Alternatively, the second option is for the market to drop to the area of $110,000 to $112,000 before updating the all-time high, and there I would look for a long position. Because after all, an update of the all-time high really seems inevitable. And as for altcoins, strictly speaking, they haven't shown anything at all. Now, let's use another tool that I've already shown you. This is the Kingfisher service. I haven't prepared for this at all. So this will be pure improvisation. I have no idea what it will show. We're looking at positions at the Bitcoin liquidation map for positions with very high leverage. Let's see what the liquidation distribution looks like here. And maybe it will point us to Bitcoin's next likely direction. We're waiting for it to load. This map, the data is being processed right now. And attention. Let's count to 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here, this elimination card says that. Just a second, we'll turn off the sound according to the good old tradition. We don't need it. And what's more, this sound indicated that locally, well, on the candles of the minute time frame, a downward movement was possible. Yes? Well, we'll see. Now it's 118, 142, maybe a small recoil. So the liquidation map shows that Bitcoin could rise to around $118,900. Here is a cluster of liquidations, or it could go down to around $117,400. Moreover, I should say that my analysis shows that it has reasons to go to the area of 117,300, 117,400. This is the analysis that I do in my private channel. No, really, I'm not even going to give any links. You don't need to subscribe to it. I'm just telling it like it is. My analysis shows that the 117,300 zone acts as a magnet for Bitcoin. But this doesn't necessarily mean some kind of global decline or major reversal. That's all. So both 118,900 and 117,400 are in view. Now let's make a liquidation map, which is called Optical Opti. This is a weighted average map that reflects both very high leverage and, let's say, medium leverage. So here you can also see that there are two zones. These are not the same as the previous ones. There are two zones. One ends around $118,900, which is in the case of an upward move, and the other ends around $117,400. In this case, they actually coincide, which doesn't always happen, and it suggests that we are very likely to see movement in both directions. Which way it will go, first up or down, I can't say. Let's take a look. Let's finish with the liquidation maps, and then look at the hourly Bitcoin candles. So finally, let's check all the leverage levels and see what's happening here. Here as well, there's a fairly dense cluster around the current price. Most likely, we will see movement both to 117,400 and to 118,900. So please check me on this. I am honest with myself and with you. I use this tool quite regularly and actively. Now let's look at the distribution of liquidations for altcoins here. You can see that many have accumulated a lot of longs. Accordingly, there are reasons to move down. Many have also accumulated a lot of shorts. There are reasons to move up. And overall, the market is overbought, yes. So on the left here, these are positions with high leverage. And on the right, these are all positions in the market, yes. And here it says that there are far more longs in the market, which means there is more fuel for a decline than for growth. Because a drop will trigger the closing of longs, and longs are closed by selling. I think you understand that. That's all. Now let's switch back to the Bitcoin chart. Let's look at the hourly candles to try to assess the current situation, yes, to see what might happen here. Well, at the moment, Bitcoin is trading above all the moving averages. And as long as we see this picture, it still has a bias toward upward movement. Well, if this upward movement continues, then we know where it's headed to $118,900. And I want to remind you that on Friday, trading of Bitcoin on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange closed, I believe, around the level of $118,240. It acts as a magnet until trading resumes next week, that is, until Monday. This means that most likely until Monday begins, we will be trading roughly around the level of $118,200. I've described the overall picture for you. As for where Bitcoin will go right now, at this very moment, I don't know. Right now, it could go either way. I don't have a position in the market. I'm telling you how it is, and I suggest you do the same way and see how things develop. Right now, we could go up or down. Trade carefully. See you next time. Subscribe and leave your comments. Goodbye.